August 14, 1943. Camp Hearn, Texas. The temperature hung at 94 degrees as Feldwebel Hans Mueller stepped into the mess hall, expecting the usual evening routine of card games and quiet conversation. Instead, he found American guards dismantling the long wooden tables and arranging 400 folding chairs in precise rows facing the far wall. A white bedsheet stretched taut between two wooden poles dominated the makeshift stage. Mueller had been captured 3 months earlier during the final collapse of the Afrika Korps in Tunisia. Like most of his fellow prisoners, he came from rural Bavaria where electricity remained sporadic and moving pictures existed only as rare treats in distant towns. The Nazi Party had promised television sets to German workers since 1935, but fewer than 100 households in all of Germany possessed the experimental devices by 1939. Sergeant Bill Morrison, a tobacco farmer from North Carolina before the war, wheeled a large mechanical contraption through the mess hall doors. The device stood 4 feet tall, constructed of polished metal and precision-ground glass lenses that caught the electric lights and threw rainbow patterns across the ceiling. Mueller approached cautiously, studying the mechanism with the professional interest of a man who had maintained Panzer engines in the desert. "It's a movie projector," Morrison explained in careful German learned from a phrase book. "Every Saturday night, we show moving pictures. Tonight you'll see Stagecoach with John Wayne. It's what we call a Western." Mueller translated for the growing crowd of prisoners, many of whom had never witnessed projected film. Oberstfreiter Kurt Richter, a 22-year-old mechanic from a village outside Munich, examined the projector's feed mechanism with fascination. In Germany, such precision equipment existed only in aircraft factories or optical research facilities. Yet here was this marvel casually wheeled out for prisoner entertainment. "The lens assembly alone," Richter whispered to Mueller, "represents manufacturing tolerances we achieve only in our finest tank periscopes. They use such precision for amusement." As guards distributed small paper bags containing something called popcorn, a distinctly American confection unknown to European palates, prisoners settled into their chairs with nervous anticipation. Many expected propaganda films like those shown in German camps, crude exercises in ideological reinforcement featuring triumphant soldiers and grateful civilians. Morrison operated the projector with casual expertise, threading celluloid film through a complex pathway of sprockets and gates. The electric motor hummed to life, and suddenly the white sheet erupted with light and movement that drew involuntary gasps from men accustomed only to static photographs. The opening credits of Stagecoach rolled across the screen in lettering larger and clearer than any poster these soldiers had seen. But when the camera panned across Monument Valley's vast landscape, revealing red stone formations stretching to infinity under endless sky, the mess hall fell into profound silence. Lieutenant Franz Weber, an engineering officer who had studied cinematography at the Technical University of Munich before the war, understood immediately what he was witnessing. "This is 35mm film stock," he muttered to his neighbor. "Professional quality. Each frame contains more detail than our military reconnaissance photographs." The technical sophistication astounded men who had worked with German optical equipment. The image clarity, the smooth motion, the seamless editing demonstrated manufacturing and artistic capabilities that exceeded anything in their experience. When John Wayne first appeared on screen, his face filled the frame with such resolution that individual whiskers were visible. But the content proved even more shocking than the technology. Here was American entertainment presenting moral complexity that Nazi ideology had declared impossible in democratic societies. The Stagecoach passengers included a drunken doctor, a prostitute with hidden dignity, a corrupt banker, and an outlaw seeking redemption. No character embodied pure good or evil. All displayed human contradictions forbidden in Nazi artistic doctrine. When the prostitute Dallas defended the drunken Dr. Boone against the respectable lady's scorn, prisoners witnessed something impossible under totalitarian rule, art that questioned social hierarchies without state intervention. In Germany, every film script required propaganda ministry approval. Every character served ideological purposes. Every narrative reinforced party doctrine about racial superiority, class conflict, or national destiny. Yet, Stagecoach, presented a democratic society's capacity for self-criticism and moral complexity. The bankers' corruption, the cavalry's limitations, the Apache grievances against white encroachment, all received honest treatment without censorship or ideological overlay. American entertainment acknowledged national flaws while celebrating individual courage and community solidarity. Hauptmann Friedrich Scholz, a career officer and committed Nazi Party member, found himself disturbed by the film's casual treatment of authority. Military officers appeared as neither heroes nor villains, but as ordinary men doing difficult jobs. No character delivered speeches about racial destiny or national greatness. Instead, the narrative focused on personal honor, individual choice, and human dignity, transcending social categories. They show weakness without shame. Scholz wrote in his hidden diary that night. The doctor drinks, the women argue, the soldiers struggle with impossible duties. Yet somehow this honesty makes them appear stronger, not weaker. In our films, everyone speaks perfectly of the fatherland. Here, they argue and doubt, yet accomplish their mission. The Apache attack sequence demonstrated American technical capabilities that dwarfed German film production. The camera work, the editing, the coordination of hundreds of horses and riders revealed organizational skills and financial resources that made German cinema appear primitive. When Geronimo's warriors surrounded the stagecoach, the action unfolded with such realism that prisoners instinctively ducked during the gunfire. Weber calculated the production costs in his engineering notebook. The horses alone represent more resources than our entire film industry possesses. Each costume, each weapon, each piece of equipment demonstrates manufacturing capacity dedicated to entertainment rather than warfare. They create beauty while building the machines that defeat us. As the film reached its climax, with the stagecoach racing across Monument Valley pursued by Apache warriors, the technical achievement became overwhelming. The cameras had captured this action from multiple angles, including impossible shots from moving vehicles that required precision engineering and perfect timing. The smooth integration of close-ups, wide shots, and tracking sequences demonstrated editorial sophistication that German propaganda films never achieved. When the lights came up, 400 German soldiers sat in stunned silence. They had expected either crude American propaganda or cheap entertainment suitable for a nation Nazi ideology described as culturally barbarous. Instead, they had witnessed artistic and technical achievement that exceeded their most sophisticated cultural productions. Richter approached the projector for a closer examination as Morrison began rewinding the film reels. The American sergeant, displaying the casual confidence that characterized prisoner treatment throughout the camps, allowed the German mechanic to observe the mechanism's operation. Richter studied the precision gearing, the optical alignment, the electrical systems with professional admiration. In Munich, I serviced camera equipment for aerial reconnaissance, Richter told Morrison through an interpreter. This machine surpasses our military devices in every technical aspect. The lens quality, the mechanical precision, the electrical stability. You manufacture such equipment for entertainment. Morrison shrugged with typical American nonchalance. Bell and Howell makes these by the thousands. Most movie theaters have 2 or 3. Nothing special about it. That casual dismissal of technological marvel as routine equipment provided the evening's most devastating blow to Nazi preconceptions. American industrial capacity was so vast, so sophisticated, that precision optical equipment exceeded German military standards while serving purely civilian entertainment purposes. As prisoners filed out of the mess hall, conversations buzzed with technical discussions and cultural observations that would have been treasonous in Germany. They had witnessed American strength displayed without boasting, American values presented without propaganda, and American industrial capability demonstrated through casual abundance. Mueller wrote in his diary that night, "We expected propaganda and found art. We anticipated crude entertainment and discovered technical mastery beyond our comprehension. Most disturbing of all, they shared this marvel freely with their enemies, confident that such beauty strengthens rather than weakens their cause. What manner of people treat captive foes to such generosity?" Saturday evening, August 14th, 1943, marked the beginning of an intellectual transformation that would prove more complete than any military conquest. Through the simple act of sharing American cinema with German prisoners, the United States had begun dismantling Nazi ideology one frame at a time. September 11, 1943. Camp Alva, Oklahoma. For weeks after the first movie screening, Saturday night had become the most anticipated event in German prisoner calendars across America. Word spread through the intricate prisoner communication networks that connected camps from Texas to Michigan. Tonight's film carried special significance that American guards, focused on routine entertainment provision, failed to recognize. Oberstfreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann, captured with the 21st Panzer Division, settled into his assigned seat as Sergeant Robert Kelly threaded Casablanca through the familiar Bell and Howell projector. Hoffmann had studied English literature at Heidelberg University before conscription and possessed sufficient language skills to follow dialogue without translation. What he was about to experience would shatter his remaining faith in Nazi ideology more completely than any battlefield defeat. The opening scenes of Casablanca unfolded in Rick's Café Américain, revealing a cosmopolitan world that Nazi propaganda had declared impossible in American-influenced territories. Here was a film celebrating international cooperation, featuring characters from multiple nations working together against German occupation. The café's diversity, with French, American, Russian, and Norwegian patrons sharing drinks and conversation, contradicted Nazi racial theory about natural ethnic antagonisms. Lieutenant Hans Weber, an artillery officer who had participated in the invasion of France, watched with growing discomfort as the film portrayed German officers as occupying villains rather than liberating heroes. Major Strasser's Gestapo methods, presented as routine Nazi behavior, forced German prisoners to confront their regime's reputation among former allies and neutral nations. "They show us exactly as the French see us," Weber whispered to his neighbor. "Not as liberators bringing civilization, but as oppressors destroying it." This American film reveals how the world views our cause. The technical aspects continue to astound men familiar with German cinema's limitations. Each scene change demonstrated editing sophistication that German propaganda films never achieved. The lighting, camera angles, and sound synchronization revealed production values impossible under Germany's resource constraints. When Sam played As Time Goes By at the piano, the audio quality exceeded German radio broadcasts. But the content proved more devastating than the technology. Casablanca presented moral complexity that made Nazi ideology appear primitive by comparison. Rick Blaine's transformation from cynical neutrality to principled resistance offered a nuanced character development that German propaganda, with its simple heroes and villains, never attempted. Dr. Friedrich Bauer, a university philosophy professor conscripted as a medical officer, analyzed the film's ethical framework in his secret notebook. American entertainment presents moral choice as personal decision rather than racial destiny. Rick chooses resistance not because of blood or soil, but because of individual conscience and human solidarity. This individualism creates strength, not weakness. The café's international atmosphere particularly disturbed Nazi-trained minds. Here were refugees from across Europe, each maintaining cultural identity while cooperating against common enemies. French, Polish, Czech, and Norwegian characters displayed distinct national characteristics while working together effectively. Nazi ideology insisted such diversity inevitably produced chaos and conflict. Instead, the film celebrated cultural mixture as a source of strength. When the refugees sang La Marseillaise to drown out German soldiers singing Die Wacht im Rhein, prisoners witnessed something impossible in Nazi-controlled territories: spontaneous resistance emerging from shared democratic values rather than ethnic loyalty. Captain Victor Laszlo's speech about continuing resistance regardless of personal cost resonated powerfully with men who had been told democracy produced only weakness and division. Here was an American film celebrating exactly the democratic resilience that Nazi propaganda claimed was impossible. The love triangle between Rick, Ilsa, and Victor demonstrated psychological sophistication that German propaganda films never achieved. Character motivations remained complex and contradictory. Ilsa's choice between personal happiness and political duty reflected moral dilemmas that Nazi ideology, with its simple racial categories, could never address. Sergeant Klaus Richter, a veteran of the French campaign, found himself sympathizing with French resistance fighters he had been trained to view as terrorists and criminals. "The Americans make us understand why the French fought us," he wrote in a letter to his family. "They show courage where we were taught to see only stubborn refusal to accept German superiority." The film's production values revealed American industrial capacity dedicated to creating beauty rather than destruction. The elaborate sets, authentic costumes, and sophisticated lighting required resources and craftsmanship that exceeded most German military equipment. Every prop, from champagne bottles to telephone sets, demonstrated manufacturing quality that made German products appear crude. When Claude Rains delivered his final lines about joining the Free French, prisoners witnessed something that challenged Nazi assumptions about American foreign policy. Here was American entertainment advocating international intervention against German expansion, presenting such involvement as moral necessity rather than imperialistic aggression. The film's casual treatment of resistance activities particularly unsettled German officers. Underground networks, forged documents, and escape routes were presented as routine activities requiring ordinary courage rather than exceptional heroism. American cinema normalized opposition to German occupation in ways that made continued resistance appear inevitable. Hauptmann Ernst Müller, a logistics officer who had organized deportations in occupied France, experienced profound psychological discomfort watching Casablanca's celebration of exactly the activities he had spent 2 years suppressing. "They make heroes of people we called criminals," he noted. "Yet their heroism appears natural, logical, necessary. Perhaps we were the criminals." The film's technical achievement proved equally devastating to German preconceptions. The camera work during the La Marseillaise sequence, with seamless cuts between individual faces and crowd shots, demonstrated editorial sophistication that required expensive equipment and highly trained personnel. American entertainment industry capabilities exceeded German military film units. As Casablanca reached its climax at the airport, prisoners witnessed something that contradicted Nazi teachings about American character. Rick's sacrifice of personal happiness for political principle demonstrated exactly the idealistic commitment that Nazi ideology claimed Americans could never achieve. The film presented American values as worth dying for, not merely profitable to exploit. The final scene, with Rick and Louis walking into the fog to join the Free French, offered American entertainment's vision of international cooperation against fascism. Here was Hollywood's confident prediction of ultimate Allied victory, presented not as military might, but as moral inevitability. When the lights came up, German prisoners sat in contemplative silence. They had just watched their enemies portray them as villains in a narrative that made such villainy appear self-evidently evil. More disturbing still, the American characterization seemed accurate rather than propagandistic. Weber approached the projector again, examining the film stock as Sergeant Kelly rewound the reels. Each frame contained more visual information than German reconnaissance photographs. The celluloid itself, manufactured by Eastman Kodak, demonstrated chemical engineering that exceeded German industrial chemistry. "How many such films do Americans produce?" Weber asked through an interpreter. Kelly consulted a catalog from the camp's film library. "Hollywood releases maybe 400 pictures a year. This one won 3 Academy Awards. It's considered pretty good, but not exceptional." That casual dismissal of Casablanca as routine Hollywood production provided another devastating blow to German assumptions about American cultural capacity. A film that exceeded anything in German cinema was merely typical American entertainment, one of hundreds produced annually by an industry that treated such achievement as ordinary commercial activity. Prisoners filed out discussing technical details and narrative sophistication that challenged every assumption about American cultural barbarism. They had witnessed American industrial might channeled into creating beauty, American values presented through compelling art, and American confidence displayed through generous sharing with enemies. Dr. Bauer summarized the transformation in his journal. "We believed Americans possessed wealth without culture, power without purpose, strength without soul. This film reveals a nation that creates meaningful art while building the weapons that defeat us. They show us ourselves through their eyes and force us to recognize truths we have spent 4 years denying." The second Saturday night movie screening had accomplished what months of interrogation could never achieve. Through entertainment, German prisoners discovered American cultural sophistication that made Nazi artistic doctrine appear primitive and American moral vision that made Nazi ideology seem evil. October 30th, 1943. Camp Swift, Texas. The autumn evening carried an unexpected chill as 600 German prisoners filed into the expanded recreation hall, makeshift theater seating now accommodating nearly the entire camp population. Word had spread through the barracks that tonight's film would be unlike anything previously shown. American guards had mentioned something called Fantasia, describing it only as animated pictures with classical music. Lieutenant Walter Steinbach, a former music teacher from Dresden conscripted into Wehrmacht communications, settled into his wooden chair with particular anticipation. Before the war, he had conducted amateur orchestras and taught piano to supplement his meager teacher's salary. Nazi cultural policy had systematically eliminated Jewish composers and performers from German musical life, creating opportunities for Aryan musicians while impoverishing the artistic landscape. The familiar hum of the bell and Howell projector filled the hall as Sergeant Tommy Rodriguez, a Mexican-American guard from Los Angeles, operated the machine with practiced efficiency. Rodriguez had worked as a projectionist at the Orpheum Theater before Pearl Harbor and understood cinema technology better than most Hollywood professionals. As Fantasia began with Leopold Stokowski conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra, German prisoners experienced their first shock. The sound quality, recorded using revolutionary Fantasound technology, exceeded anything they had heard from German radio or concert halls. Each instrument emerged with crystalline clarity from speakers positioned around the recreation hall, creating three-dimensional audio that made the orchestra appear to be performing live. Dr. Heinrich Müller, a musicologist from the University of Vienna who had been serving as a Wehrmacht cultural officer, immediately recognized the technical achievement. This recording captures overtones and harmonics that our best German equipment cannot reproduce, he whispered to Steinbach. They have solved acoustic problems that have challenged European engineers for decades. But the real shock came when Mickey Mouse appeared on screen, conducting an orchestra of animated instruments through Dukas, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. German prisoners, raised on Nazi propaganda about American cultural barbarism, watched cartoon characters interpret classical European music with understanding and creativity that exceeded most German cultural productions. The artistic skill required for each animated sequence astounded men familiar with technical challenges. Oberstfreiter Franz Kellner, a draftsman who had created technical drawings for Messerschmitt aircraft, calculated the human labor involved in producing smooth animation. Each second of film required 24 individual drawings, with 2 hours of Fantasia, representing nearly 200,000 handcrafted illustrations. The precision exceeds our aircraft blueprints, Kellner noted in his engineering journal. Each frame demonstrates artistic skill and mathematical accuracy. The coordination of drawing, music, and camera work requires organizational capabilities that surpass our military planning. The Nutcracker Suite sequence proved particularly devastating to Nazi racial theories. Here was American popular culture treating Tchaikovsky's music with reverence and creativity, transforming Russian classical composition through innovative artistic interpretation. Dancing mushrooms, fairy ballerinas, and flower petals choreographed to beloved European melodies demonstrated cultural sophistication that contradicted everything prisoners had been taught about American intellectual capacity. Steinbach found himself weeping during the Ave Maria sequence, as animated pillars of light interpreted Schubert's sacred music with spiritual beauty that exceeded most German religious art. The combination of visual imagery and musical performance created aesthetic experience that challenged Nazi claims about American materialism and spiritual emptiness. They understand our music better than we do, Steinbach wrote in his diary that night. American artists have found new ways to experience beauty that European tradition never imagined. This is not cultural theft, but cultural evolution. The Rite of Spring sequence, depicting evolution from primordial Earth through dinosaur extinction, demonstrated American willingness to engage with controversial scientific concepts that Nazi ideology had declared forbidden. While German schools taught racial pseudoscience and rejected evolutionary theory as Jewish corruption, American entertainment casually presented scientific knowledge as shared human heritage. Dr. Muller recognized the sophisticated understanding of paleontology and geology displayed in the dinosaur sequences. They show millions of years of natural history with scientific accuracy and artistic beauty. German education, focused on racial mythology, has made us ignorant of natural sciences that Americans consider elementary knowledge. The technical achievement became overwhelming as the film progressed. The multiplane camera system, which created depth perception impossible with traditional animation, demonstrated engineering innovation that exceeded German optical technology. Each scene revealed manufacturing capabilities and artistic resources that made German cultural production appear primitive. When Chernobog emerged during Night on Bald Mountain, spreading his wings over a mountain peak while demons danced to Mussorgsky's music, prisoners witnessed American entertainment grappling with concepts of evil and redemption that Nazi ideology, with its simple racial categories, could never address. The transition from demonic darkness to sacred dawn, synchronized with musical development, presented moral complexity that challenged totalitarian simplification. Captain Wilhelm Hoffmann, a former Nazi Party cultural officer who had supervised book burnings and degenerate art exhibitions, experienced complete ideological breakdown during the Pastoral Symphony sequence. Here was American animation celebrating exactly the natural beauty and classical harmony that Nazi cultural policy claimed to defend, yet presented with technical mastery and artistic vision that exceeded anything produced in Hitler's Germany. "We destroyed books and paintings in the name of cultural purity," Hoffmann confessed in a letter that somehow passed camp censors. Yet these Americans, whom we called barbarians, create beauty that makes our destruction appear evil. They preserve and transform European culture while we diminish it through ignorance and hatred. The audience of dancing centaurs and cherubs interpreting Beethoven's Sixth Symphony demonstrated American artists' intimate familiarity with European cultural traditions. Every musical phrase received visual interpretation that revealed deep understanding of classical composition structure and emotional content. Sergeant Rodriguez noticed the prisoners' profound attention and invited several to examine the projection equipment after the screening. Dr. Muller and Kellner studied the 35mm film stock with professional fascination, discovering technical specifications that exceeded German manufacturing standards. Each frame contains more color information than our best printing processes can reproduce, Muller observed. The chemistry, the precision manufacturing, the quality control necessary for such results require industrial capabilities that we never imagined. The film's production statistics, casually shared by Rodriguez, revealed economic resources dedicated to cultural creation that dwarfed German cultural budgets. Walt Disney had employed over 750 artists for 3 years, using resources that could have equipped several Wehrmacht divisions. American society channeled such wealth into entertainment while simultaneously building the military forces that were defeating Germany. As prisoners filed out of the recreation hall, conversations buzzed with technical and artistic observations that challenged fundamental Nazi assumptions about American culture. They had witnessed American popular entertainment demonstrating intimate knowledge of European classical traditions, technical innovation that exceeded German engineering, and artistic vision that made Nazi cultural productions appear crude and primitive. Steinbach summarized the transformation in his journal. "We came believing Americans were cultural barbarians incapable of creating or understanding beauty. This film reveals artists who comprehend European musical heritage more deeply than most Germans and possess technical capabilities to express such understanding through new artistic forms. They are not destroying our culture, but fulfilling its highest possibilities." The third Saturday night movie screening had demolished Nazi cultural mythology through overwhelming evidence of American artistic achievement. German prisoners could no longer maintain beliefs about American cultural inferiority when confronted with Fantasia's undeniable demonstration of technical mastery, artistic sophistication, and creative vision that exceeded their homeland's greatest cultural accomplishments. December 23, 1944. Camp Hardened, Texas. 18 months after the first movie screening, the recreation hall buzzed with anticipation as 800 German prisoners gathered for a special Christmas Eve presentation. Camp Commander Colonel James Murphy had arranged for an early screening of It's a Wonderful Life, still in limited release across American theaters. The film's themes of community, sacrifice, and redemption seemed appropriate for men facing an uncertain future as their homeland crumbled under Allied assault. Oberstfreiter Hans Richter, now serving as camp librarian and English translator, had watched nearly 70 American films since that first August evening. His transformation from committed Nazi to thoughtful Democrat had occurred gradually, film by film, as American cinema revealed cultural depths and technical achievements that made German propaganda appear primitive and evil. The Bell and Howell projector, now operated by Richter himself under American supervision, represented technology he understood intimately. 18 months of Saturday screenings had provided education in American industrial capacity more complete than any intelligence briefing. Each film demonstrated manufacturing precision, artistic resources, and cultural sophistication that exposed the magnitude of German miscalculations about American strength. Dr. Friedrich Bauer, the philosophy professor who had maintained detailed notes throughout his captivity, prepared to analyze what might be his final American film before repatriation. His notebooks contained observations that would later inform post-war German reconstruction efforts, though he could not know this on a cold Texas evening in December 1944. As It's a Wonderful Life began with prayers for George Bailey rising to heaven, prisoners confronted American religious expression that contradicted Nazi teachings about Christian weakness and democratic spiritual emptiness. The film's casual integration of faith and daily life revealed a society where religious values strengthened rather than weakened secular institutions. Jimmy Stewart's portrayal of George Bailey provided character complexity that German propaganda films never achieved. Here was an American everyman struggling with disappointment, temptation, and moral choice without simple ideological answers. His journey from ambitious youth to community pillar demonstrated individual development that Nazi doctrine, with its emphasis on racial destiny and state service, could never address. The Bedford Falls setting revealed American small-town life that challenged Nazi urban-rural propaganda. Instead of the corrupted industrial cities and backward agricultural regions that Nazi ideology described, the film presented integrated communities where business, family, and civic responsibility reinforced each other through democratic participation. Lieutenant Ernst Müller, a former party functionary who had supervised Hitler Youth programs before conscription, found himself moved by the building and loans mission of providing housing for working families. They show capitalism serving community needs rather than exploiting workers, he wrote in his diary. Business success comes from helping neighbors achieve prosperity rather than concentrating wealth among elites. The film's technical achievement continued the pattern of American entertainment exceeding German capabilities. The cinematography, lighting, and sound recording demonstrated production values that required expensive equipment and highly trained personnel. When George Bailey ran through Bedford Falls on Christmas Eve, the camera work and lighting created emotional impact that German propaganda films never achieved despite their ideological intensity. Frank Capra's direction revealed American filmmaking sophistication that made Nazi cinema appear amateur by comparison. Each scene transition, character interaction, and emotional development served the narrative without obvious manipulation or propaganda messaging. American entertainment achieved ideological impact through storytelling skill rather than heavy-handed political instruction. The Angel Clarence's intervention provided spiritual content that challenged Nazi neo-pagan mythology. Here was American popular culture presenting Christian themes with sincerity and sophistication, celebrating divine concern for individual human worth rather than racial collective destiny. The film's religious message strengthened democratic values rather than undermining them through otherworldly focus. When George Bailey saw Bedford Falls transformed into Pottersville, prisoners witnessed American entertainment's sophisticated treatment of social and economic issues. The contrast between community cooperation and exploitative capitalism demonstrated understanding of class conflict that Nazi ideology claimed Americans could never achieve. Captain Wilhelm Hoffmann, who had organized cultural events for Wehrmacht units, analyzed the film's artistic structure with professional admiration. American entertainment addresses complex social problems through compelling narrative rather than simplistic propaganda. They trust audiences to understand moral lessons without explicit political instruction. The sequence showing George Bailey's impact on community life revealed American values that contradicted Nazi teachings about democratic weakness and individualistic selfishness. Each person helped by George's sacrifice demonstrated how individual moral choice created collective strength rather than social fragmentation. Dr. Bauer recognized philosophical sophistication in the film's treatment of personal meaning and social responsibility. They present individual fulfillment as emerging from community service rather than personal aggrandizement. This integration of self and society achieves what our ideology promised but never delivered. The technical achievement of the alternate reality sequences astounded men familiar with German special effects limitations. The transformation of Bedford Falls into Pottersville required production coordination and artistic vision that exceeded German film industry capabilities. American entertainment channeled resources into creating beauty while simultaneously producing the weapons that were defeating German armies. As the film reached its climax with the community rallying to save George Bailey, prisoners experienced something that challenged Nazi assumptions about American character. Here was democratic society demonstrating exactly the solidarity and mutual support that Nazi ideology claimed only racial communities could achieve. The Christmas Eve conclusion, with friends and neighbors contributing money to cover George's deficit, revealed American community spirit that made Nazi claims about democratic individualism appear false. Voluntary cooperation achieved what German law and propaganda had tried to impose through force and indoctrination. When the credits rolled and lights came up, prisoners sat in contemplative silence. Many faced repatriation to a destroyed Germany within months. They had spent 18 months witnessing American cultural achievement, technical sophistication, and moral vision that made their former beliefs impossible to maintain. Richter approached the projector for perhaps the final time, removing film reels with practiced efficiency. American guards had trusted him with expensive equipment, included him in technical discussions, and treated him as a colleague rather than an enemy. This casual respect for individual capability regardless of national origin demonstrated democratic values in practice. Colonel Murphy addressed the assembled prisoners in careful German. "Tomorrow is Christmas. Many of you will return home soon to help rebuild Germany. Take with you what you have learned here about freedom, prosperity, and human dignity. America hopes for friendship with a democratic Germany." The 800 German prisoners who filed out of that Texas recreation hall carried with them 18 months of education in American capabilities, values, and achievements. They had witnessed industrial might dedicated to creating beauty, cultural sophistication that preserved and enhanced European traditions, and moral vision that made democracy appear strong rather than weak. Dr. Bauer summarized the transformation in his final journal entry as a prisoner. "We came believing in German superiority and American weakness. 70 films later, we understand that strength comes from freedom, prosperity from cooperation, and culture from diversity. The movies ended, but our education in democracy has just begun." Saturday night movie screenings had accomplished what military victory alone could never achieve: the complete intellectual transformation of enemy soldiers into future democratic citizens. Through entertainment, America had demonstrated that its greatest weapon was not military might, but the overwhelming attractiveness of free society's capacity to create abundance, beauty, and human dignity. The German prisoners who boarded repatriation ships in 1945 and 1946 carried with them more than memories of defeat. They possessed intimate knowledge of American achievement gained through 18 months of Saturday evenings in Texas recreation halls. Their return to Germany would plant seeds of democratic transformation that would bloom into the Atlantic Alliance and European integration. The movies had ended, but the projection of American values into German minds would continue shaping European history for generations to come.